Okay, so Jack, he's the national president of the John Birch Society, lives in Wakefield, Massachusetts, and has been on staff since the early 60s. So, Mr. McManus.
Thanks, Hal. It's always good to be with you folks. I brought along a couple of things to mention. The subject of supporting local police, of course, is to oppose federalization of the police. Any country that is a dictatorship always has control of the police. And the police are there to guard the people in power, not to help the people who hired them and so forth. It's a very easy thing to explain in a few words, but it's very hard to get through to some of these politicians, that's for sure. Way back in the 30s, there was a congressman from the state of New York who probably would have been a John Bircher if there had been a John Birch Society back then. His name was Reed, R-E-E-D. And in April 17th of 1935, it was in the Congressional Record, I have a copy of it here, he said this: in the American constitutional system, the power to establish the ordinary regulations of police have been left with the individual states, and it cannot be taken from them, either wholly or in part, and exercised under the legislation of Congress. Right? So obviously there was concern even back in the 30s about nationalization of police. Well, he wouldn't have bothered saying that. He went on, he said, neither can the national government through any of the departments or offices assume any supervision of the police regulations of the states. And neither the power, the police power itself, nor the discretion to exercise it as need may require can be bargained away by the state. So what he's saying there is the message of the John Birch Society. And when the John Birch Society got started in late 1958, that wasn't an issue at the beginning. It became an issue because members of the society got a hold of Robert Welch and said, here's an issue we ought to be involved in. And he immediately said, you know, you're right about that. And so we started the Support Your Local Police campaign. Interesting that it came from the members. And it's not the only thing that has ever happened in that regard, but it certainly did happen. Back during the civil rights days, there was an awful lot of attempt to federalize police. There were calls all the time for taking police power away. Police brutality was a big issue, as it is today. And the society got involved. We came out with a little flyer called Policeman. And it just talked about what it means to be a policeman. And then it talked about police brutality. It talked about the war on police, quoting from a Senate report about the communist attempt to destroy local police and federalize them. And then the stated principles of the Support Your Local Police committees. And on the back, please send me information, help me know more about this. For $1 you get a packet, for another $1 you get so many copies of the flyer and so on. So, well, this was widely reprinted. You weren't in the society at that point. Yeah. This was reprinted all over the country, and it did a tremendous job. And policemen everywhere were looking at it and saying, my golly, there's somebody who supports us? This was a surprise to a lot of policemen, and so forth. So we used that to great effect. Now, then we started putting out articles in the magazines. I don't have these date-wise, but I'll just give you an idea. Here's one called Federalizing Our Police. That was from the Review of the News. The author of that was himself. Right. Here's Polycrats, Beware National Police. Polycrats meaning police bureaucrats. You know. We also had OSHA-crats at the time to fight against the Occupational Safety and Health Administration. So putting crats at the end of something became quite common. This was by Alan Stang. Now these were reprinted and many, many thousands of copies. Here's one by Gary Allen. Gary Allen wrote an article called Federal Police. Here's one called Support Your Local Police by a fellow named Gary Handy. And here's another one, Local Police, Keep Them Independent by Timothy Heinen. So you can see that the society was very active. Now, right in the middle of all of the activity, the federal government came out with an organization called the Law Enforcement Administration, Law Enforcement Assistance Administration, LEAA, right? And the goal there was to have the federal government start financing local police. Well, when you finance something, you gain control of it. So we had to oppose that. And some of these reprints got into that subject. And lo and behold, we were successful. And the federal government finally did away with the LEAA. It came back, the goal to finance and then control local police has come back, as you know, several different other ways, but that organization itself was abolished, and it was because of pressure put on by the John Birch Society. And I like to think of things like that when people say, oh, you Birches, all you ever do is talk and read books, you never accomplish anything. Right? You heard that?
Oh, I've heard that.
Right? Well, yeah, we talk and yeah, we read books, but we also have some clout. And I'm discovering more and more, as Hal mentioned, I'm going to be speaking on December 12th about the history of the society. More and more, I find out other little victories that we had over the years. And if we can have little victories, we someday hope to be strong enough to have big victories, right? So every once in a while, I would get contacts from members here in the country and so forth, and wanting to know if we could put together a flyer for them to distribute to stop something that was going on in their community. So I got a call from good folks in Houston, Texas, wanting to know if I could put together something quickly for them, because they were starting a civilian review board down there. Now, the Civilian Review Board was something that we fought very successfully in New York City, of all places, and defeated it. The Civilian Review Board was to be put between the working policeman and his superiors. So a charge of police brutality would come, and instead of the police officials dealing with it and talking about it and so forth, or going to the local government agencies and so forth, there was this Civilian Review Board appointed, and all lefties, and they would register a decision on whether or not this policeman should be fired, or should he be docked, should he be fined, should he be put in prison, or whatever. The Civilian Review Board, wherever it was started, totally destroyed the morale of the police. They stopped doing their jobs, which was the intention of the people behind it to begin with, right? So we fought against the Civilian Review Boards. We beat it in New York City. It slowed it down terribly. Well, the people in Houston, they were worried about a police review board starting in their community. So we took the front page of our policeman flyer and we put it on this 4-pager. And here's a fellow selling newspapers and extra, support your local police, on it. And we sent this down, and lo and behold, the people in Houston distributed these by the thousands, and the Civilian Review Board died in Houston. Right? Another victory. Everywhere you turn around, there was a victory here. The Birch Society accomplished this, did this, did this, did this, and so forth. So, yes, things can be done. I don't know what else I put together here rather quickly. I talked about Congressman Reed. Yeah. Well, now we have the New American Magazine. This is the latest, one of the latest issues. And it's all about police under fire. And if any of you in your town would simply get a copy of this, go down to see your local police chief, ask him for a couple of minutes of time, share with him a copy of this, tell him it's to support your local police, and emphasize the word local. You will do your country a big favor, right? So if people in this community and that community and other communities would do that kind of thing, we'd be closer to saving our country and keeping it from going under. The attacks against the police today are intense. I just saw an article, maybe some of you on the news saw about this policeman down in South Carolina who was called in because of a upsetting of the school day by one of the local students. They called in the principal, and he couldn't stop this young girl. And they called in somebody else, and he couldn't stop it. So they called the local police, and the policeman came in there and talked to this kid, and obviously got sass in return. So he just turned the chair over, dumped her out on the floor, and dragged her out of the room. He's now under indictment or something. He's now facing all kinds of problems and so forth. But I just read an article about, came over the internet, where a guy said, "The brat got what she deserved." I can just imagine this sassy little thing looking up at a policeman and what must have come out of her mouth. I mean, you can just imagine. So support your local police is a very important subject. I remember giving talks on this subject 30, 40 years ago even. And I would start off by saying, consider that you're a citizen living in the Soviet Union, and you see a policeman standing on the street corner. Now you have an alternative of going down that way, or you can cross there and go down on the other side of the street. Which would you probably do? You would stay away from that policeman, wouldn't you? But now you're a citizen in the United States, and you see a policeman on the street corner, and what do? You walk up to him and you say, "Hi, how you doing? Hope you're having a good day," so forth. And you're not afraid of him, and he's not after you, and the situation couldn't be more reversed. And what happened in the Soviet Union with people regarding police happens everywhere. Everywhere that totalitarian dictatorships take over, you will find that people fear the police. But good law-abiding citizens, you don't fear the police, right? Except if you live in some communities I can think of, right? Which I won't name. So we have to support our local police. We have to let them know we appreciate them. It's not an easy job. And little pamphlets like the one I showed, or the entire magazine, which we have, I'm glad to see a pile of them back there. How much are you getting for those, Hal? $1 piece? Okay, well, everybody get a couple of those. But make sure you go see your local policeman, your local police chief. You know, call up the police department. Say, "I'd like 5 minutes of the chief's time. When's a good time for me to come by? I have some good news for him." Always say you got good news, and they'll be very happy to receive you. And I think somebody was telling me recently, or maybe at this table right over here, that somebody brought in a copy of the magazine and talked about supporting local police. And the police chief said, in all my years as a police, I've never seen anybody come with something to congratulate the police, to thank the police, to help the police, and so forth. You've made my day, right? So make the day where you live, and let's keep police locally controlled. I can remember there was a federal official one time said, there are 43,000 police departments in the United States, and it's totally impossible to control every one of them, which was exactly what we were saying. They wanted to control every one of them. They wanted to convert the situation with police just exactly as I described the attitude of a local person would have had in the Soviet Union years ago. So that's good. Thank you very much.